Well, extreme situations can take you to just your physical and emotional breaking point. Few situations speak to this more than war. Our next guest knows this all too well. Commander Sheri Snively is a U.S. Navy chaplain who has crafted just a really vivid personal account of the effects of the Iraq War on soldiers and civilians alike in her book, Heaven in the Midst of Hell. It is filled with compelling images and takes readers on just an unforgettable journey into the human soul. Sheri joins us this morning to talk about it. Good morning to you, Sheri.
Good morning.
Good to see you this morning. What made you write this book?
Well, you know, my father was a World War II veteran, and he went to the Battle of Midway right out of flight school. And really, I know nothing about his stories. And so I wanted my children, who were only 5 and 8 at the time when I volunteered to go to Iraq, I wanted them to know why I volunteered to go. I missed my son's 8th birthday. That was the day I landed in Iraq. I wanted him to know why. So that was one reason. Another reason was my own personal journey. Working at a trauma hospital in a morgue in the middle of a war zone was hard, and so it was a way for me to deal with what I was seeing. And then just to tell the stories of our everyday soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines, and then for the broader community just to see that there is spirituality and hope even in the midst of the most dire situations.
You know, you talk about working in a morgue, and certainly I'm sure you saw some sights that few of us could even imagine. This had to be an emotional process for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How so?
Well, writing the stories and looking back over the photographs, each time it reminded me of certain situations and people. Now, obviously, there were times when I couldn't photograph, but there were times instead when I would write down what was going on. And so each time I would relive those. And so absolutely, the emotion comes back up.
The emotion comes back.
Absolutely.
And probably even more so because now you've had some time to digest it and really think about what it is, you know, that you saw. What was it like to chronicle your time in Iraq with a camera and then look back on it and say, wow?
Well, I went over there knowing that that was going to be part of my own healing, so to speak, as a photographer and also as a writer. I do both of those as spiritual practice, really. And so for me, it was a way to chronicle that as history for myself. It was a very moving experience, even at the time, but even more so coming home.
What did you find in terms of who people think they are and who they actually are in extreme situations?
Well, that can be rather surprising. Sure. I think that when you dig deep, you're stronger than you might realize. That's one aspect. The other aspect is to realize that even in the midst of the darkest situations, there are little glimmers of light. And you can find that in yourself, and you can find that in other people too. As
a woman, do you think that you saw or felt things differently?
I think in some ways. I mean, we each bring ourselves to the table, so to speak. I mean, who we are, our background, our history. And so certainly being a woman is part of that. And I think that one aspect of that that was really powerful was as a mother. Not only working with our young soldiers and sailors and Marines, but also with the Iraqi women who had babies that were coming into our hospital wounded or even dead. And so there was a connection there. There was also an interesting connection with some of the Iraqi men that came into the hospital. And one of the most profound moments for me as a woman was being actually gifted with the title, their imam. They called me their imam, which means their spiritual prayer leader. So they actually gave me that recognition, which was truly profound, especially in that culture.
You know, I'm looking through the book and I'm seeing all these wonderful images that we're taking a look at on the screen now here as we talk. What has the reaction to all of this been from your military colleagues?
It's been very positive, from the lowest ranks to the highest ranks, from both active duty reserves and retirees. You know, every person who has been in a combat situation, we may have different places that we serve, different names, but there are similarities. And so there is a bond that is forged with veterans, and I think that this book speaks to that. I think it allows people a way to talk about their own stories if they haven't been able to, and it allows ways for their families to enter into some conversation, because most veterans don't share a lot of this kind of stuff with their family and friends.
Well, you can only imagine. I'm sure that family and friends probably have no idea and couldn't even process, you know what I mean, what it is that goes on over there. What is the takeaway? What would you like to leave our readers with this morning?
Well, I think that first and foremost that stories, personal stories, are very profound and very sacred. And I think that sometimes people think their own personal stories really have no meaning, but they really do. So it is the power of personal story. And then it's the power of having hope in the midst of despair, having peace in the midst of war, having that sense of life even in the midst of death. And then the third thing, if you have a dream and if you have a vision and you know it's what you're supposed to do, which is what I knew this book had to be, then go for it.
Well, you went for it, and it turned out beautifully, Sheri.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming by and sharing this with us this morning.
Thank you so
Moving
much.
stuff. And again, the book is called Heaven in the Midst of Hell. For more information on Sheri or the book, please visit the website ravenoakspress.com.